I am incredibly honored and privileged to have Tripathy join us today. Trip is a highly accomplished CEO, COO, CFO, having served in senior management roles in both the US and abroad. Trip has over 30 years of executive experience in the consumer products and retailing sector, and he is a seasoned independent board member and business advisor. Throughout his illustrious career, Trip has significantly contributed to the profitability, growth, and strategic direction of several renowned companies, including PepsiCo, Limited Brands, Macy's, TJX, and Yildiz. He holds an MBA, CPA, and is an NACD governance fellow with proven skills in strategy, business transformation, growth, turnarounds, M&A, and international business. Trip, you have such an incredible body of work. Take me back to when you first came to the United States. What did success mean to you at the time, and what were your goals?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It really is a pleasure for me to, share whatever I know, to help people. So I really appreciate the opportunity here. Yeah, so I came to the United States, of course, many years ago, as you might be able to tell. I call myself a poor student because that really was the situation. I was born in India. I grew up there. My parents were great about making sure I got an excellent education, but it wasn't like we were wealthy or something. So I worked for a couple of years in India before deciding to come here. Got married along the way, and my wife and I shared this vision of wanting to come to the United States and get better educated. We both had undergrad degrees by that point. And as I mentioned, we were actually both working when we made the decision to come here. But, the Indian rupee doesn't go a long way when it comes to US university fees. So through a lot of painstaking research and talking to people, I decided on a university called Texas Christian University, TCU, in Fort Worth, Texas. And people always ask me, why TCU? Well, other than the fact it's a great school and is getting increasingly more recognition for that today, the fact was I didn't have money. And I had to make sure I went to a school where I had a reasonable opportunity through grades and things like that to get financial aid. So we showed up, like many people with 2 suitcases, my wife and I, and 1 semester's fees and 3 months living expenses. And we came to Fort Worth, Texas, and for the next 6 months, it was a little difficult. We ran out of money, of course, and through the university, I got a job, doing accounting at the business school office. I started doing a little bit of tutoring. Most importantly, I focused on my grades. Obviously, we didn't have the time or money I didn't have a car. Okay, so we walked everywhere, the grocery store and all that. But you know what? It was a wonderful time because we had each other, right? And more than that, we had the opportunity to be in the United States, to go to a great school, and to think about a future that was really long-term. So that was very energizing. And we knew that the issues we were facing in terms of not having money to do groceries and things like that was temporary. We knew that, right? So it was an adventure in many ways. And we made it so, and we relied on each other. And most importantly, in that first semester and throughout school, I focused on getting great grades. So that paid off at the end of the first semester. I got financial aid, and off we went. Okay, and school was a terrific experience. We made a few good friends. As I said, it wasn't like Friday night I'd be going with everyone to the bar for a beer. I didn't have the money to do any of that. But as I said, we had each other. We had a few good friends, and that's all we needed. Should I just keep going, George?
Yeah. What was the vision for you guys at the time? Like, obviously, you want to do well in school, you want to get a job, but did you ever dream that you would have the type of career that you ultimately have? You know, how intentional were you in pursuing these opportunities that you ultimately got?
You know, the one thing that has always guided me is my father's advice, which was no matter what you do, just do the absolute best that you can do.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, with integrity and honesty and all those things, of course,
Hmm.
attached to it.
Hmm.
And I had inspiring parents, which is a story for perhaps another day. But my father's guidance on that is what drove me, and that's why the desire wasn't, gee, I want to be a CEO and make a lot of money and do the. The desire was, I'm in this new country.
Hmm.
There's so much of opportunity. I just want to do my best.
I
Okay,
see.
and having been given this opportunity, I don't want to focus on just ordinary things like, oh, I want a lot of money and success and,
Right. Right.
and so that's what guided me throughout my time and still guides me today, which is whatever you choose to do, do a great job at it, embrace it,
Mm-hmm.
love it if you can,
Of course. Yeah.
and if you can't, then you need to move on. But
Yeah.
love what you do. Try to do an exceptional job as best as you can.
Of
We all
course.
have limits and limitations, but to
Certainly.
the extent of what your capabilities are, give it your best.
Mm.
And and that's what I've always applied, and that's what I applied coming out of school,
Mm-hmm.
because I was very fortunate to join Price Waterhouse, right,
Mm.
in Dallas on the consulting side.
Mm-hmm.
And that turned out to be such a great start to my US career and my time in the US.
Yes.
Price Waterhouse is a quality company, great
Yeah.
place.
Certainly.
Um, and I spent three years with them.
You what I think you kind of answered this already, but why have you been successful? You were able to go to multiple organizations and move up pretty quickly. How are you able to do that um, in multiple organizations in several industries? Is it that mindset you talked about in terms of like always
Yeah,
giving your best no matter what, and knowing your core competencies and focusing
yeah.
on that? What was the formula for you?
Sure. So I think the first piece was always the father's, example of do your absolute best.
Yes,
The
sir.
second thing was to just be open to learning, okay?
Hmm.
To learning new things, acknowledging that you don't know everything, right? Because a lot of people go into a new
Yeah.
situation and, oh, I know everything. Don't tell me anything. I know how to do this, right?
Right.
No, I've always wanted to do every job, whether it's my initial jobs or my later jobs in management roles. I've always
Hmm.
gone in saying, hey, I don't know anything. I'm open to learning.
Right.
Tell me, teach me, tell me, and I'll contribute as I pick up speed
Hmm.
and hopefully give back more than I've taken.
I see.
Uh, the third thing was I was always careful about the kind of organization I was joining, right?
Mm.
I always wanted to join companies that had a reputation for being ethical,
Hmm.
for being good with people, and for being challenging, right?
Mm.
So, for example, I interviewed, and I won't mention their name, an insurance company. Nice job, good money, nice town, but it was going to be a boring experience. And I said, I don't want to do that. Okay.
Mm.
I want to be in a job where I'm learning, okay,
Yes.
where I'm growing.
Mm.
And I'll come back to that theme a little later, learning, growing,
Yes.
being appreciated. I'll come
Appreciated.
back to
Yes.
that.
Yes. I remember.
But that was always the sort of guiding principle. And of
Hmm.
course,
Hmm.
you want to be in a place that where you can grow yourself and the business. So
Certainly.
I've always liked businesses that are in growth mode, but
Hmm.
I've also worked in organizations that needed a turnaround. Okay.
Right.
Which is growth in a different way, where you're trying to fix the business and then grow back up again, right?
I see. Yes. So many of my colleagues are international students, and they face a real obstacle in finding sponsorship from companies, right?
Yeah.
Um, what advice would you give to them as they navigate the US business environment, coming from another country with a totally different set of values and, way of
Yes.
doing business. From your experience, how would you help them and advise them in transitioning?
Very good question. Very good question. And I think I should have added one more to your last question, which can tie into what you just asked me, which is, don't forget where you came from. Okay. Don't come to America and try to be an instant American. Okay. Because Americans come in all, shapes, sizes, outlooks, accents,
Certainly.
religions, and colors.
Yes.
Okay. So don't forget your values, growing up. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't forget the society you came from. And I never forgot that because I didn't try to be Indian in America. I just didn't forget my values and the things that made me who I am. So one of the things in India is it's very society driven in the sense of relationship driven,
Yes.
highly relationship driven. Okay. And that helped me when I came to the US because building relationships right from the start is what eventually led to that first role. So some advice for international students who come here, kind of find their feet, be yourself, right? It's okay, and you must learn how to flex to situations, but don't change who you fundamentally are because you will not be happy, right?
That's great advice.
I think it's very good to integrate into this country if you choose to make it home. You must make the effort, okay, to be an American. Okay?
Yes.
Whatever that means and entails, right? And not just be critical of the culture here. It's different. And don't keep comparing it to your culture. It's a different country. Okay.
Yeah.
So embrace the culture, adapt and flex. Build relationships right from the start, not just within your community of international students, but outside. Okay. The opportunity for me was through tutoring. Okay. I met a lot of undergrad students of all different types, right? And met some very interesting people through that tutoring. I also tutored a number of executive MBA students,
Nice.
And one of those actually became a good friend of mine. And, a year and a half later, when I started looking for a job, and I couldn't get interviews on campus because I didn't have a green card. Right? He heard about my search because I mentioned it one day and introduced me to a friend of his who was a senior manager at Price Waterhouse.
Wow.
And that's what eventually led to the role at Price Waterhouse. So building relationships, I think, is very, very, very important. Okay.
Absolutely.
Understanding the new culture you're in. You don't have to go changing your accent or your name. Okay. I've never changed my name. Trip is actually my father's nickname from India, right? So you don't have to go changing your name. You don't have to go changing your accent unless it naturally happens over time. That's fine. Okay.
Yes.
All I'm trying to say is don't forget your values, but do embrace the new country, the culture, the ways of doing things as soon as you can, if you intend to be here.
Yes. That's wonderful advice. Excellent advice. It's a real issue. I see so many of my friends like stressing on, trying to find that opportunity, and they're competing with other international students who are here as well as the local population, right?
Absolutely.
And so I feel
at all. Yeah.
I feel for them because, you guys come here not knowing the culture, speaking the language okay, but you're still learning, right? And acclimating. It's such a tremendous challenge. And to see them overcome that is really inspiring. And
yeah, it is hard. It is hard. And I can certainly, give people like that more advice, at a different point in time, perhaps. But I think the immediate thing is network, adapt yourself.
Yes.
Rely on your friendships. That's important. Build new friendships. Get to know people and learn. And network. I mean, you have got a network. Okay?
Yeah.
Especially if you have employers, if the job market is tight, there's a lot of competition.
Yeah.
Play to your strengths. Okay.
Yes.
My strengths at the time was I loved numbers. I knew numbers, and I still do, regardless of what direction I've gone in. Okay?
That's my weakness. Numbers. But I'm honest, and so are you. I love that.
That's how I got my tutoring assignments. Some people were weak on numbers, and
yes,
welcome.
yes, that's awesome. Can you speak to as you climbed the corporate ladder, can you speak to some of the sacrifices along the way, or some of the hardships that you had to overcome along the way, whether it was
Yes,
organizational or just the lifestyle of traveling? Can you speak to that a little bit?
sure.
Because
You know,
we often think about, the
absolutely.
glory, but not the tough
Yeah,
part.
absolutely. So of course it's a tough road. Okay.
Mhm.
Things don't just automatically happen and you shoot your way to the top,
Right.
unless you're the owner's son or something, that's unlikely to happen. You got to work your way up.
Absolutely.
And like I say, most of us were not born with a silver spoon in our mouths. We have to do it the hard way. So the first thing is, I think it's important to define what is success to you. Okay.
Mm.
Does success mean I want to be the CEO? Or does success mean, you know what, I don't want to be the CEO. I want to have a nice balanced life and be happy and of course enjoy my job and do everything I need to succeed at it. So that's one thing I learned early on, that it's not all about how do I climb my way to the top. Okay.
Mhm, mhm,
In my case, I did not define climbing my way to the top as my goal. I defined doing a great job
mm,
and being challenged by the roles I came up with as my goal. Okay. And that really hasn't changed in all these years.
mm,
I think some of the sacrifices you go through, particularly at the time when I entered the job market, the US business scene it was a tough culture. Okay. And I remember the companies I worked with, it was very much well, you better wear a red power tie and a dark suit and a white shirt.
mm.
And otherwise, that's like uh, the basic entry criteria, if you would. And then you got to be tough. You got to be tough and, get things done. And that was sort of the culture across the United States. Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
And that wasn't me. Yes, I wore the red power tie and the dark suit and all that stuff, but
Sure.
I wasn't in your face tough
Mm,
guy. I'm going to do a great job, and gee, I'm going to do it with a smile, and
mm,
I'm going to enjoy the people around me and build relationships.
mhm.
And that's all I did. And that's all I've ever done in every role I've been in. Right. And it worked because people appreciated it,
Mhm.
and the doors opened up. I think the companies I chose to work with, Price Waterhouse meant very long hours. Okay.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
And it drove my wife crazy, all these jobs. but she was a trooper.
Yeah.
I would come home at 11 o'clock at night from Price Waterhouse, which was a great firm, by the way. I love them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my boss would call me at 11:30 with a question because we were working on some sensitive, important stuff. And
Mhm.
I'd have to be back at work at 6:30 in the morning. Okay, so that was tough, right?
Oh yeah.
When I worked for PepsiCo, there was a lot of international travel. Sounds very glamorous. I'm off to Paris and I'm going to Hong Kong. And the reality was, you got on a plane for many, many hours. You landed somewhere in some city. You
Yes.
went to the hotel, freshened up. You went to work. You came back, and you caught a flight back. 2 days later after working hard for 2 or 3 days.
Mhm.
So sounds glamorous.
Yes.
I'm glad I did it, and I saw glimpses of the world during that time.
Yeah.
Um, but really, it was about work and hard work. Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
and these companies and most good companies are not like easy on you in
No.
terms of
No.
what they expect from you. If you
Mhm.
want to grow and do well and learn, then you have to go the extra mile. Okay,
Mhm.
so in my case, it meant, unfortunately, sometimes I'm on vacation, but I'm working
Mhm.
on something because it's time sensitive and time critical. In retrospect, I wish I hadn't, right?
Mhm.
But I didn't have a choice. I had to do what I had to do.
Mhm.
My parents were in India, and the most I could take in terms of a vacation in those days was 2 weeks a year. So I'd go for a week to India. You're
Mhm.
flying, you leave on a Friday night, you arrive on Sunday, and then you turn around and come back on Saturday so that you can, freshen up on Sunday and go to work the next
Mhm.
day.
Mhm.
So it was hard in that sense, but nothing I didn't know, right? So
Mhm.
and I,
Mhm.
and I never really complained about it because I said, I chose this track.
Yeah.
This is what I chose to do. Okay,
Yeah.
and so if I have anyone to blame, it's me, right?
Right.
I can't say they made me do this. That's what I chose, right? And it was good. Listen, it wasn't just all hard work and stuff. There was the satisfaction of doing really interesting stuff. There was a satisfaction of learning new skills. And I never changed jobs for the money, but it just so happened that as I grew in my career, the money came along. The positions came along, but it was always after the fact, which was, I took the job because I liked it. It was interesting. And that's why I took it. Okay? And as I got into it and I progressed with it, the money followed. Right.
I see.
And so that's a piece of advice to people. Don't be driven by how much are they paying me. Be driven by what am I going to learn in this new job? What sort of people are they? Is it going to help grow me? Okay?
Yes, sir.
As an individual, as an executive, as whatever, a team member. That's what should be driving you. Okay. If you focus on money, it's not going to last very long. That career-driven track will not last very long.
That makes a lot of sense. You touched on something that I often ask folks, especially in the consulting industry or any kind of high-powered industry, like, how do you stand out when everyone around you is brilliant and has a great pedigree or education, right? Like, how do you stand out in that environment where, in consulting, it tends to be a little more competitive, obviously rigorous and very demanding. How did you separate yourself, other than what we've talked about? Because clearly, you always had the mindset that was instilled in you from your family and your father. But was there anything else that helped you to kind of carve your own path in that?
So I'll talk about PepsiCo, because I spent almost 12 years there. And it was a driven, high energy environment. And I would say I don't think it's changed in all these years, even since I left, but the quality of people there was very high, okay? At all levels. Okay. People were smart, they were very driven, they were highly experienced, and they all wanted to succeed and do well and whatnot. So you pop yourself into that environment and say, okay, in this environment, I'm just one of them. Right? Yeah. So how do you do well in an environment where everybody's at a high standard?
Absolutely.
Okay? Well, you're not going to stand out by stabbing someone else in the back. Or that's for sure. Anywhere. So what you do instead is you focus on what you can bring to the table. Okay. So in my case, I always had very strong, no matter what type of job, I always had very strong strategic skills and very strong financial and analytical skills. Okay. So I and still can, without all the let me run 50 analyses and let me do 20 charts, to show you. I developed over time the ability to look at a situation and say, oh, that's what we should do. Okay. And then do the research and back it up and do whatever I have to do. Right.
I see.
I could look at numbers and say, oh, that's not going to work. Okay. And I still can. I can look at a set of projections, for example, and say, something's off here. How did that happen? Well, it was time.
Over time.
For example, at Pricewaterhouse, we had to do lots and lots and lots of financial modeling and strategy because we were dealing with a lot of bankrupt and turnaround businesses at Pricewaterhouse. Okay? I was able to bring those skills to PepsiCo in terms of financial analysis, strategy. And PepsiCo was great about taking financial executives and turning you into business people. Okay? So they encouraged you to be a business person, okay? Which meant they would throw you into situations and you learned. Okay? And you had to apply strategy, you had to apply financial analysis, you had to apply relationships. Okay.
Certainly.
So I won't go into too much detail, but just a quick example. I was a finance guy, right? One of my very first projects was, okay, how to expand in the Middle East markets. Okay. So maybe a year and a half into my career at PepsiCo, I was told, all right, we want to get into this country X. Okay. Here's the people we've been talking to. Here's the key lead guy from our side, very senior guy, who's leading the discussions, and you're the finance guy. We're popping you into it, but it's yours. You run it, you do it, do whatever. So I joined this very small type team, and I was the go-to person. Okay. All the everything, dealing with the potential partner, dealing with the potential new CEO from PepsiCo, doing the acquisition, dealing with the lawyers, all this kind of stuff. And then along the way too, okay, how do we bring Lay's potato chips into this country? They don't have the quality of potatoes. So I was working with agronomists. I'm a finance person at that point, right? And I just learned so much. Okay. Oh. And then being in the negotiations with the other side to buy the company, again, another big learning experience, going through all the legal documents. That's where, the attention to detail, the numbers, and you just if you are willing to learn, you can learn a lot. Okay? So again, I think I just focused on doing the best job I possibly could. And that's what allowed me to be at PepsiCo for almost 12 years and keep growing my career.
Yeah.
So I always look back at that time and say, oh, these were a lot of very, very good executives working in that company.
Yes.
And in that environment, I credit myself with lasting for 12 years and leaving on my own. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to. Yeah. But the learnings I got during those 12 years have, lasted my whole career.
Did you have any, mentorship is such a big buzzword these days. Did you have any mentors along the way to help guide you in your path, in your career?
Yeah. So in general, most of my bosses have been mentors. Okay? Not all. Like at Price Waterhouse, I had a terrific boss. Okay. And he and I worked on a project early on. And, I liked him, he liked me, and we started working on every single project together for 3 years. Okay. And he would always challenge me to do this, do that. He's the one who would call at 11 o'clock at night, okay, and drive my wife crazy. But he and I were like this. I learned from him. He was a really, really smart guy, taught me a lot, challenged me, pushed me, and helped my career. Okay. Because he would tell his boss and bosses around me the kind of work I was doing and the good job. And as a result of which, I was promoted a couple of times pretty quickly at Price Waterhouse and became a manager. Awesome. During that time, he got promoted a couple of times and became a partner. Okay?
Wow, that's awesome.
So, and then when I chose to leave, the other thing is I don't just let people go, right? So he is today a very close friend of mine, okay? Like most of my bosses, okay? Not all, but most, right? So he was a terrific one. And then later at PepsiCo, I would say, yes, I had bosses along the way, and they were good people. They were all very good people.
Of course.
But one of them in particular, who was, again, one of my closest friends, came into this company as my boss and again, challenged me, drove me, gave me stuff to read, and spoke to the senior management about me. Okay. And said, and by the way, he beat me up when I did something wrong. I mean, really did. Okay. He made sure I was held accountable. And see, I like that. I don't want a mentor or a boss in that role who's, oh, you're my friend, don't worry about it. He wasn't my friend. I mean, he at that time. But I knew he was pushing me and challenging me and encouraging, but it was hard. Okay?
Sure.
It was hard work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, at the end of my time working with him, he had already arranged for the senior finance guy at PepsiCo to come through that country, meet me. A month later, I had a job offer back in New York with PepsiCo. And that's how I moved, right? And it was because of this guy, right? Who still sends me book recommendations, but he's my close friend.
Yeah.
Right? One of my top 5 close friends, that's him. So I think when you work in a company, right, seek out mentors because they are there. It may not be your direct boss, it may be somebody else, right? And I had other people, for example, in my first role, I had a very senior executive who sort of became like almost like a father figure. Okay.
Wow.
And he liked me and, he liked the work I was doing, but he wasn't my boss. He was my boss's boss's boss. Okay.
Wow.
And not a finance guy. He was an operations guy. Okay.
Hmm.
But he took a liking to me and, he would teach me stuff and look out for me and all that stuff. So the point is that you can't build a relationship like that if you're a flake.
Right.
Sorry to use that word, but if you're a flake, you have to get that sort of sponsorship by giving everything you can to what you're doing.
Yes.
And people see it, the quality of your work, the kind of results. At least that was my path, all right? Maybe there are other people who are just so brilliant, they just zoom their way through and get mentored. And that wasn't my path. My path was do a great job, work hard, make sure you're delivering quality work, make sure you're learning, admit if you're wrong and take the rap, okay, but learn from it, okay?
Absolutely.
And I have a good example of that one, maybe another day. But
Yeah, we may have to have a part two. In your mind, what makes a good mentor or a good leader? Because mentors in many ways are leaders, right?
yes,
What is a leader to you?
yeah. So I think the first is, have some compassion, okay, for people around you. Certainly be demanding, okay? You should absolutely, if you have a mentee or somebody on your team, be demanding of what results you expect, okay? Especially if the person has potential, okay? You need to challenge people in a good way, right? Not with 11 o'clock call at night, but with laying out the expectations, teaching the people how to do it, teaching the mentee how to do something, and then stepping back and letting them do it, okay? And letting them make the mistakes and then saying, oh, you know what, you could have done this way, you could have done it that way. So I think if you really want to be a mentor, it's not just, hey, let's meet over a cup of coffee and, chat about 15 minutes about how no, you got to take an active role, okay? And it's more than just that 15-minute, let's talk over coffee. It's getting engaged. What are you working on? Oh, your boss said this. Why? What did you do? Right? What did you learn from it? Okay. So it's being challenging, but also being available, right? And if you're not the direct boss, then don't try to be the boss of the person. Be helpful. And if you are the boss, be kind. Okay, be kind. Not the people that you're leading may not have the same abilities or knowledge as you do. However, as a boss, I think there's a lot you can learn from everybody on your team and around you. Okay. Absolutely. Again, the spirit of wanting to learn is very important, even for a mentor or a boss. But I think for me, my approach to leadership is let me show you how, and then you go do it. Okay. And I'm here and I will guide you and I'll challenge you and, I'll take the hit if you screw up somewhere. My job to say, hey, talk to me, don't talk to him or her. Okay?
Love that. Yeah.
But privately, I'll say, you really screwed up. Okay?
Right.
What the hell were you thinking there? How are you going to do it different? That's your role. Okay. And those are the sort of bosses I had who were good, right? They would protect me if I screwed up, but they'd beat the hell out of me, to make sure it wasn't repeated.
Right. So what's it like being in the C-suite?
Yeah, I think it can be pretty daunting the first time, right? Because you've never been a C-level officer, and you've got to learn how to be pretty quickly, okay? So for example, that overseas company I mentioned that I was involved in acquiring, I went in there as the first CFO from PepsiCo. So that was something new, right? It was different for me. And I had to quite quickly demonstrate that I could be a good CFO, not just to my bosses back in New York or to my boss, in that country, but also to the team, most importantly, because as a C-level officer, your credibility is very important. So I knew enough about the company through the acquisition process, but I didn't know how to be a C-level leader, right?
Mm,
So I think in that first role, which came pretty early in my career, I would say, I learned how to be a leader. Okay,
mhm,
which meant not just directing people what to do, but partnering with people from other functions.
mhm.
Um, Even though you might have known that you knew a lot more than them, right?
Right,
The
right.
idea wasn't let me impress you with how much I know. The idea was let me use my knowledge to help you succeed and the
Mhm,
company succeed through that. And
mhm,
so it was a very, very important experience that I went through there for almost 3 years
mhm.
in that role. And I came out of it really as a leader. I enjoyed being a leader, not just because, oh, I'm leading people, I want to be a general.
Mm.
No, it was about look how many people you can influence and help, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And how, in a broader way, beyond your role, you can help the company succeed.
certainly.
And then the CFO role itself, at PepsiCo, it wasn't just about let me close the books and, report the results. It was how are you going to be a real partner to the CEO? How are you
Mm,
going to help him or her deal with strategic issues, with pushing things through, with a governmental, problem? How do you do all of that? And I learned all of
right.
that there. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was really a great experience.
It's amazing. What's important to you at this juncture of your life?
At this juncture, look, I mean, I've had a long career.
Yeah.
I've actually retired twice so far,
Mm,
because I retired from a 100% active corporate career
mhm.
uh, 5 years ago,
Wow.
thinking I'm done. Oh my God, how wonderful is this? Now I'm free. I can do whatever I want. That lasted about 6 months. Okay.
Wow.
And my wife, who was also looking forward to, finally he's going to
Yeah.
be home, not traveling. 6 months later, she was, you really need to do something, right? So at that point, post the first retirement, I started doing some consulting work, right?
Nice.
Board and C-suite consulting. That was my idea. And
Mm,
then about a year later, I joined a networking group and made friends with the CEO of a Miami-based CPA and advisory firm, quite a big one.
mhm,
And after chatting with him a number of times, he invited me to join the firm as a partner, which
mhm,
I did. I joined them as a partner running CEO and board advisory services, which was something new for them. It was
mhm,
close to home. It was the pandemic,
mm,
so it wasn't that hard to get into. I did that for 2.5 years. And then in February of last year, I quit because of a medical issue my wife had. So I
mm,
chose to retire for the second time.
mhm,
But along the way, I joined the corporate board as a board member and
mm.
as eventually as the audit committee chair. And we sold that company, late last year.
Oh,
So
congrats.
I'm out of work again, right? And and now I'm trying to figure out what is my third career going to be.
Yeah.
No, but I would say at this stage, one thing I've learned is, yeah, I would take a full-time job if it was something interesting and something.
Mhm,
But that would not be my first choice
mhm.
because I've also learned, what, there is a life outside of work,
Certainly.
friends, the place you live, traveling, spending time with your wife and family, things
Mhm.
things like that are equally important, if not more important. Okay,
Yes, sir.
they always were. It's just that you didn't have the time to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I have time to do that now, and what I'm trying to achieve now is how do I make sure I preserve that, but also be gainfully employed doing something. So it's going to be a mix of trying to serve on a board or
Yeah.
two, doing some consulting type work, board level or CEO type consulting work.
Mhm,
I've kept myself open to interim C-level roles.
mhm.
So I'm kind of open and flexible,
Yes, sir.
but without this pressing need for, oh my God, I have to go back to work. Okay?
Mm. I
I
think
don't
you,
have to go back to work.
right, right, which is such a blessing, and congrats to you. I think you'd be a great podcaster. I mean, you could easily create content on career, management, leadership at all levels,
That's
strategy. You
that's
could
a good
talk,
end.
you have a wealth of knowledge to share with the world, and I really think there's a place for that. People would really listen to you because
you.
you have the social proof. You've lived the life.
I'll certainly take that advice. I've also thought about speaking engagements, as
Yeah,
another opportunity. So I'm
absolutely.
going to tell you a short, very quick story of a failure. Okay.
No, please, yeah.
So I used to be very shy. I was not used to public speaking and being on camera and talking to groups of people and whatnot,
Mhm.
right till the time I joined PepsiCo, right? And then one day, about 6 months into my role there, which was a finance role at the time, right?
Mhm.
I never had to stand up in front of, large groups of people. But one day I got drafted at the last minute into delivering the finance piece of his presentation on a subject I really was not familiar with at all.
Wow.
Okay. And there were some good learnings out of this because I went into this meeting room and there were about 50 executives from the company there, all senior to me.
Wow.
And I did the finance part of the presentation, which was 10 or 15 minutes. And let me tell you, it was the most horrible experience of my life. I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know the subject matter.
Mhm.
I was intimidated by having 50 people in front of me, all senior people.
Yeah.
And I eventually stumbled off the stage and I was so happy to get out of there. Okay. But within half an hour, my boss called me and said, "What the hell was that? What did you just do?" Right? You really screwed up, big time. And
Yeah.
I was sure I was going to get fired at some
Mhm.
point, but I wasn't, fortunately. But it was a huge learning experience. Okay.
Mhm.
And there are two or three things I learned. Number one, you better know what you're talking about, otherwise, don't do it.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
The second thing is train yourself to be a good speaker. Okay.
Mhm.
Train yourself not to be intimidated by large groups of people. And I
Mhm.
did, right? I changed, the shy, introverted guy, and I
Mhm.
flexed. I still talk to my values. I still, am sincere, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's genuine. It is genuine. So I didn't change who I was. I just built my skills. So
Mhm.
along the years, I've talked to large groups of people within the company, outside the company. When I was at Macy's here, we even did a public television Teacher of the Year show where I was, the keynote speaker and television and God knows lights,
Wow.
camera, action. And I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was great.
It's
Okay.
awesome.
So I'm not intimidated by that, but it's a failure that I had to learn from. Okay.
Right.
And we're
Right.
all going to have failures. So I'm trying to say, as I think about my future career, I'd love to be, of course, some of this has to be revenue generating, otherwise I
Of
can't
course.
do it. I continue to be a mentor to many people
Mhm.
who used to work on my teams and even otherwise. Even though I've left the firm I was with here, I'm still a mentor, officially a mentor to one of the women executives who hopes to
Mhm.
be a partner there.
Mhm.
I'm a mentor to several people who used to work on my teams, over the years.
Mhm.
So that's certainly something I will keep doing. This whole idea of speaking engagements is something I'm very intrigued by.
Yeah.
Um, so any advice you have, I will definitely be reaching out on podcasts and anything else you
Absolutely.
have.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have so much knowledge and wisdom to share, not only about transitioning to the US, but also transitioning to other countries and running organizations, adapting to different cultures, right? I mean, that's a really important area of business that I think is often overlooked. We're such a global world and global community now, especially with social media, and
That is
I
so
think
true.
yeah, and I think there's really a space for people who are tried and proven, professionals who have lived experience. You have so much to share, I think. So
Well, I'm not afraid to say I need help as I choose my next career.
no
Open
worries.
to any advice.
Well, Trip, that's it. I thank you so much for joining me today. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope the viewers will too. This is such a treat and a pleasure to have you. We could certainly go on for hours. We might have to have a part two, but I'm so grateful to have you, and Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
No, my great pleasure. As I said, I'm so happy to do something like this and to be asked to do something like this. So
Yeah.
I certainly hope your viewers learn something from this. Both my failures as well as the opportunities that I pursued.
Yes.
Just above all, keep a balance.
Mm.
Don't be in a big hurry saying I got to
Yeah.
succeed.
Yeah.
Do your best and be. The other thing I never mentioned was be respectful of people. Okay,
Mhm.
no matter which country or culture you're in, respect the people around you. Okay, it is
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely. Tripathy, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you, Trip.
Thank you so much.